Congressman James Walkinshaw, he is on the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Understanding that our team of reporters all across the globe, just starting to pick through these documents that are now being released for the first time after this immense pressure campaign to see this day come to pass. What are your early takeaways from this release today?
Well, thanks for having me. And first, I want to credit the courageous survivors. Without their voices, we would not be at this point today where we're starting to get some transparency. It's enormously frustrating that the law is clear, the files in full were supposed to be released today, and the Trump administration is not in compliance with that law. So that's very frustrating. That notwithstanding, our team, House Democrats, Oversight Democrats team, we're going to be combing through what has been released to determine what is there and what might be missing so that our investigation can proceed.
You say that DOJ is not in compliance with the law. And yet we did hear Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche say there are hundreds of thousands of documents that are going to be released over the course of 2 weeks. Do you need to wait until the conclusion of that time to make that firm statement that DOJ has not been compliant? Or are you certain at this very moment that there has been noncompliance?
Well, the law is clear that the files in full are supposed to have been released today. If the Department of Justice felt like they weren't on track to meet that legal deadline, they should have communicated that to Congress days or weeks ago. They've had 30 days to redact what needed to be redacted from the files and release them in full to the public. So they have not followed the law. We're going to explore all of our legal options to make sure that the complete files, with obviously information related to victims and survivors redacted, comes to light.
Well, let me follow up with you on that. Can you be more specific? What exact recourse or actions are you prepared to take to bring DOJ fully in compliance?
We're having those conversations now. Ranking members Garcia and Raskin from the Oversight and Judiciary Committees released a statement that they're consulting with our counsel to determine what the legal options could be, consulting with the legal representation for the survivors, but we're going to pursue every possible remedy. I don't have additional information for you right now in terms of exactly what that will be.
And talk about the significance of this day, understanding that and Congressman Ro Khanna, who's one of the lawmakers who led the charge to see this day come to pass, has put out a statement saying he's disappointed that the documents are not being released in full. But talk about the significance of the fact that there is this large tranche that is starting to be released, something that lawmakers, but also the survivors have called for.
I think it's incredibly significant, and it's significant because it's one of the very few instances that Republicans in Congress have found their backbone and stood up to Donald Trump. They resisted it for a long time. But, it's important to remember President Trump has done everything in his power to block these files from being released. He tried to browbeat Republican members of Congress to remove their name from the discharge petition. He was actively lobbying against the discharge petition and the vote before it was held until he realized that he was going to lose. So he's tried everything in his power to block it. And in Congress, in a rare instance, in this particular Congress, stood up to him and said, the American people want to see these files. The American people deserve transparency, and the survivors especially deserve accountability for those involved in the crimes committed.
And I've just gotten this statement from Congressman Khanna. Let me read it to you, Congressman. I'll get your reaction on the other side. He says, I have to say that the release has been disappointing from the initial read of it, but I reserve judgment until we go through all of the release. Again, what I'm calling for in terms of a constructive next steps is for Todd Blanchard, Pam Bondi to get in front of the country to share the timeline for the full release. If they were to do that, would that satisfy what you are calling for, Congressman?
Well, I think that's a necessary step, and it's not what I'm calling for. It's what the law that President Trump signed calls for, which is for the files to be released today. So, yes, at a minimum, they need to come before the country and Congress and explain why they haven't released the full files today and lay out the timeline moving forward. I hope a rapid timeline for the American people to get the transparency that they want here.
And Congressman, as you start to go through these files, what specifically are you looking for?
Well, I think for me and I think for most people across the country, we want to know who, if anyone, who maybe hasn't been yet implicated, was involved in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Who are the accomplices who helped him to commit these crimes? Who perhaps knew that these crimes were taking place and didn't go to the authorities at the time? I think those are all really, really important questions. But this is a story of, rich and powerful men raping and abusing young girls and women. And we need to get the full truth. Everyone who knew about it, everyone who was involved, everyone who might have helped it happen.
And Congressman, just finally, once the files are released, what do you anticipate happens next?
Well, in the Oversight Committee, our investigation is ongoing, and it's also worth noting, even separate from the legislation requiring the release of the files, we have an active subpoena with both the Department of Justice for them to turn over the files to the Oversight Committee and to the Epstein estate for them to continue turning over files. And our philosophy is we're going to follow the investigation wherever it leads. I'm not prejudging where that investigation will lead, but we need to get all of the information and follow the investigation wherever it leads.
All right, Congressman James Walkinshaw, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.